and the first thing that popped up was this Windows 98 logo. And then I was like, I've been doing it for 3 decades, which makes me sound really old, but I'm only 45, so I'm still a baby. But anyway, so glad everybody's here so I can share some knowledge with you today. I've been a Google trainer since 2016. And it's truly one of the things I love to do the most. I use these tools every single day, basically, in my real job. I'm a teacher at Joy K-8, and I work with the big kids. I've taught everything from 4th grade and up. And this next year, I'll be teaching our 7th and 8th graders. So I hope today you'll get some tips, tricks. Since you're in Google Meet, this is a great time for you to play around with Google Meet because you might be using it with students for reals and you want to make sure you know your tools. Is when I'm talking, if you don't want to see me, you just want to see the slides, you can go down to the bottom corner. After you hover in the bottom, there's 3 dots. And you can, next to where it says I'm presenting, and you can change it to spotlight view, and that'll just have the slides. I actually hide myself on Google Meet because when I watch myself talk, I don't remember anything I want to say. So I just would rather stare at a black screen, which is what I'm doing right now. I do have the chat open, and I'll try to get to questions later. I have that as one of my slides. So we will go ahead and get started. Before I start any presentation, I always start with my iceberg. This is my one soapbox. In the next hour, I'm going to cover everything above that water line, okay? And then all the stuff below the water is all the things that you can possibly learn about Google Forms and quizzes. What I hope to provide is an appetizer, something that makes you want to go learn more. And I also give you some resources so that you can go follow your dreams and find new things to learn about. And so I really want everybody to know that when I do this workshop, usually it's an entire day. So I do this for 6 hours, and we have lots of fun playing around with stuff. But today I condense it all down and hopefully just give you a little bite. And then later on, you go on and find more things. You should also know my insane love of Bitmojis. I try to put them on everything I have. And it's funny because my Bitmoji used to be me with this nice, cute haircut and a blazer and high heels. And the day we went to remote learning, I changed it into what I actually wore to work for the rest of the year. And you'll see in a second, I actually have flip-flops on too. But I love putting Bitmojis on everything, especially in my classroom. Every morning, my kids come in and I have a different Bitmoji of myself, and it's usually my mood. So they kind of know what they're getting into when they get there. But I love using them because you can really do anything with them. So you'll find them in a lot of my presentations. Okay, so my iceberg soapbox. Of course, like any good teacher, I talk about objectives and the things I want to get accomplished. These are more for me than you, but I like to go through the things I'd like to talk about. So the first thing we're going to do is go through how to quick start a Google form. We're going to explore some different question types, and then we're going to look at how we take a form and we turn that into a quiz. And then we're going to work on sharing the link to our quiz so people know how to take it, because really no quiz is worth anything if nobody can get to it. And then we're going to look at how to review and grade our responses. If you think of something along the way, drop it in the chat, and near the end, I have a place where we'll do a chat check and we'll go through and look at all the questions that you guys have, see if we can address some of those things. Okay. At the very end of the presentation, there's a link. If you want to download this presentation in PDF, you can do that, or you can join my Bitly, and you'll be able to see the slides in slide deck form there. All right. So broadly, let's begin. Why do educators use Google Forms? It's one of the many apps in G Suite. If you used it 6 or 7 years ago, it is miles ahead of where it was. It used to be pretty clunky, not very user-friendly. It was super basic. And every year, which Google for Education, this is what they're all about, right, is taking teachers' feedback, changing it into something that's usable. And so here are the reasons we use it. Number one, it's because it's web-based. Anything web-based is easy because all people need is a device and an internet connection, and they can get to it. Web-based makes it easy to get to. Of course, paperless, every teacher's favorite thing ever. Nothing to lose, nothing for kids to not put their name on, nothing for the dog to eat. Everything's paperless, and everything you do in Google is automatically saved. And so your responses are there, whether a child takes a quiz at 9 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock in the morning, it's there for you to look at, and it can't get lost. Great teachers always recreate things, copy things, remix things. So I'm always on a mission to save time. I try to shave minutes anywhere I can. I do a lot of reusing of my quizzes, and I'll show you a couple tips that I use. Young teachers are overwhelmed because they feel like they have to create everything from scratch. And I try to tell everyone this, try to copy as many people as you can, because everybody has already done the work for you. All you can do is take something that someone else has made, put your own spin on it, and you're good to go. Google Forms have lots of question types, so we'll talk about some of those. Usually anything you want, question you want to ask, you can get it done with Google Forms. Google Forms is simple on purpose. There are a lot of bells and whistles that people ask for from Google for Education, and you'll find that Google is very selective, that they try to keep their tools simple, and the UI, the user interface, try to keep that very clean. And so you'll find that a lot of our tools have the same UI, the same setup, the big plus button with the circle. It's all very on purpose. And so it's a simple design. Also, I assign forms to my students. So I want the tool to be approachable, not just by adults, but I love assigning kids forms where they have to come up with an assessment for something that they've learned. It's a way to have them critically think. And you don't want to assign them a tool that it's really hard to learn, because kids won't enjoy the work. So I love the fact that it's simple. We gather data with forms, and Forms makes it very, very easy to do. And then if you are in a district that has managed Chromebooks, meaning that your Chromebooks are managed by a network administrator, they are in our district, then you can turn on locked mode in any form quiz. You know, when this first came out in the fall of 2018, it probably started 3 days of debate on Twitter of, well, are we teaching kids how to be good citizens if we're shutting down their Chromebooks while they take a quiz? And I'm of the school of thought that it's a choice. A teacher can turn it on or off. There's some situations where it's really a good idea, and some situations where it's not really a big deal. All it means is when they start the quiz, the Chromebook can do nothing else. They can't click out of the window. It just takes up the entire screen until they push submit. So I think that it has a purpose, and it's one of the great things that we can use on form quiz as teachers. Okay, so how to quick start a form. One of the greatest things of Google that I always talk about, and I probably love it a little too much, is that you can quick start anything in G Suite with .new. So if you want to start a new doc, you just put in docs.new into your Omnibar. Hopefully you're using Chrome. Or if you want to start a new sheet, it's sheets.new. Or if you want to start a form, it's forms.new. Of course, you can always go to your drive and select new and go down to forms. It's the same exact thing. Google always tries to make sure there's 6 different ways to do the same thing. And so this is my little shortcut that I like to share. It'll open a new form in a new window, which I'll show you in a second. The question types that you have available to you in Google Forms, this list hasn't changed much in the last 2 years. File upload was probably the last thing that they added, and checkbox grid. I think you'll find that most questions you want to ask, you can find here in Forms. Some things require a little bit of finessing and rethinking, but I think you'll find that this number of question types is actually a really good one. The file upload is great because sometimes you want kids to upload some sort of artifact, maybe a screenshot or a picture of something from an iPad. Then you can use file upload, and that goes into your responses. My biggest tip for people that are just starting to make forms, and I know Karen Millington had this problem a couple times and I couldn't fix it for her, but you have to put name as one of your questions. Because if you're in a district like me, every student doesn't have their name attached to their Chromebook. It's their S number. It's their student number. So if you have a class of 30 students and you get all of their student numbers back as responses, you're not going to be sure whose grade to put in the gradebook. So do yourself a favor, make question number 1, what is your name? If your data is going to go into a spreadsheet later, make first name one of the questions and then last name one of the questions. And then you can sort by last name later. So that's one of my tips for question types. So when I click on forms.new, I'm going to go out of my presentation here for a second, but it'll be there for us. This is a brand new, just born baby form. Just right out of the womb right here. This is how they look, right? They're always purple. I don't know why. I wish they would switch. Like I wish one time it would be red, but they're always purple, which is not my favorite color, but you can always come up to this paint palette here and make your form your own. You can choose images or one of their images. And then Google also gave you the opportunity a couple years ago to change the font, which I don't ever do. I don't think a form looks good like with a cursive, like no one can read it, but you know, it's there because guess who likes to do that? The kids. They like to put their forms in cursive, and they like the playful one, although it looks like Comic Sans to me, so I automatically have deep hatred for it. All right, so untitled form looks just like this, and this is where we add our questions. So here's my question drop down. And every time you're working in a form, there's always a question that's highlighted, and that's going to be given a bar here. So if I wanted to add a new question, it would go below it. And there's always one active question, as you can see. And then these can be moved around. So I can move this guy underneath this guy, and I can move my questions around. I can make them required. I can copy one. So if you are making a quiz where a lot of the questions are similar, you don't have to keep recreating the wheel. You can just copy and make a new question. So this is our baby form. We're not really going to do much with this, but I wanted to show you how forms.new works. And I have another form that we'll go to in a second. So I'm going to go back to my presentation. And we'll go to the next slide. All right, once you have your form done, now I know I'm skipping a little bit. I mean, I'd love to go through and talk about every single question and all the things you can do with it. Trust me, there are resources out there that will walk you through every single one. So let's just pretend that I went through all the question types because I want to get to the good stuff. Your form is just a form until you turn it into a quiz. It's not just going to know you want it to be a quiz. So at the very top of your form, on the right side, there's this list of icons right here. The paint palette we already talked about because we did the colors, right? This guy is the preview eye, and we'll talk about him in a second. But this cog right here is the most important thing because this is where you control all the settings for the form that you're in. So if you click your cog, you're going to come up to the main settings panel. It looks just like this. Very simple, not a lot of bells and whistles, and that's on purpose. You have 3 different things: general, presentation, and quizzes. If you go to the quizzes part, then you'll come to another section where it says make this a quiz. And we'll look at this in bigger in just a second. But you should know that that setting to turn it into a quiz is up there in that cog. And that's where most of the settings for your quiz are going to be. So now you know where that is. After you transition to a quiz and make it a quiz, then this panel will come to life. And you can decide what kind of things you want to have happen when your test takers or quiz takers take their quiz. This is where you can turn on or off locked mode. You can also do this from Classroom if you're a Classroom user. And then you can do it at the form, obviously, right here. You'll see that they're not able to open any other tabs or apps while they're in your quiz. This only works on managed Chromebooks. The only bad part about this is you can't practice taking your quiz. If you're on like a MacBook, you have to turn it off, practice taking your quiz and check it out, and then turn it back on again. But if you have it on lock mode, then that is where you control it. Oops. You can also decide whether you want to immediately release your grade so that when students get done, they can see how they did. Or you can choose to have it wait for you to look at it. So I do this a lot if I have questions that kids have to type something in and I want to read what they wrote. I won't release the grade until I've done that. And sometimes kids freak out. They'll say, look, it said I got a 0. Like, no, you didn't get a 0. I got to grade it first. Forgot to toggle. So that will make sure that you can look at it first. And it'll even say to them, your grade will be available after your teacher has looked at it. And then you can decide whether you want kids to be able to see which questions they missed, which answers were right if they got it wrong, and then what the point values are. If you're making a quiz that's like a practice, so I want you to practice this material and then later on we're going to take the unit quiz, I usually turn off missed questions, or I definitely turn off correct answers. So they'll get to the end and it'll say you got 6 out of 10 right, and they won't know what the 4 are that they got wrong, which drives them crazy, but it also makes them go try to figure out what are the ones that they got wrong. So these are really powerful when it comes to formative assessment that's not for a grade, where you're trying to get kids to practice things that they might be tested on later. Point values I usually always leave on because I think kids should know how much points things are worth, but I suppose if you wanted to turn it off, you could do it there. All right. Once you're in your quiz, and I'm going to live demo this in a second because this is a little weird on a slide, but once you're in your quiz, you have to decide, you have to tell your robot what the right answer is so it knows what to do. So in each question, you'll see that this little guy that says answer key will show up once you've turned your form into a quiz. And when you click on the answer key, then it actually changes the look of the question, so you can go in and do all sorts of cool stuff to help you give feedback, give right answers, and we can do a little bit of response validation. So if we go back to, I made a plearning form really fast. And if you know me, you know my verb plearning just means play learning. So you play with something a lot so that you're learning while you're doing it. When you go to one of my workshops, we learn for a little bit and then we plearn for a little bit, where I give you a task and then you go play around. And then we talk about what are the things we discovered. So I might give you this plearning form, and you can go in and edit the questions, and you'll see if you click on one, all of a sudden it changes to the edit form. But because I've turned this into a quiz already, I can click here on answer key. Now let's look at the question first. This is a short answer question. Short answer questions are designed to be a few words. And I've said, what is your favorite food? All Google questions you can add pictures to. So some people like to add lots of pictures to their forms. I'm very jealous because they obviously have a lot of time, but I sometimes do that when I have a lot of time. So I like that feature. If I go down here to answer key, you can see now it changed the question. It's still, what is your favorite food? But I can add a correct answer. Well, I wouldn't do that to this question, right? So I'm not going to tell a kid what question is right. This question is worth 0 points, and I didn't add a correct answer. So my robot, my Google form, is not going to grade this. It's just going to give me what the kid said. And then later on, I could assign a point or whatever. I could also assign a point here. Maybe I want it to be 5 points and everybody gets it right. And that works too. So another thing you can do here is, yeah, exactly, chips and salsa. You can also enter feedback, this is one of the best things about Google Forms. You can do this at question level. You can also do this by the student level, and I'll show you how to do that. So let's say that a student enters a question answer into the form and it's wrong. You could say, every time a student gets something wrong, I want you to look at this video. And then you could post a YouTube video or a link to something that reviews something in that question, so that when they get their quiz back, they say, man, I got number 2 wrong. Oh, but Miss Curry gave me a video to watch. Oh, now I know, right? So you can put that in the feedback, and you can either have it showing when they get things wrong or right. So you can have correct answer feedback and incorrect answer feedback. If we come down to this multiple choice, of course, I went ahead and chose Juno as the capital Velasquez because that's the correct answer. If I wanted to change it to something else, this question now, if a student chose Juno or Nulato, it would be correct. Obviously, I don't want that. But you can make more than one answer correct, even if it's a multiple choice. So sometimes teachers will choose checkbox, but actually multiple choice is a better answer because maybe you have two answers that you would accept. And then you can add answer feedback here. So if a student gets it wrong, I can enter this feedback. Go back and read chapter 3, or look at this link. Or if it's a correct answer, I could be like, way to go, here's a ticket, or excellent work. That kind of feedback, if we're talking about remote learning and we're talking about not being in the same room as your students, this stuff is gold. It is the stuff that you have to know how to do, because if you're just asking kids to take a quiz and submit, there has to be some human element to it if you're not in the same room. And so this kind of thing, the feedback, is what we should all be kind of focusing on. Not as much the points and the grades, but think about how you can insert yourself and your personality into the things that your students are doing. And this feedback is a great way to do it. All right, let me see if I'm on my track here. Yes, okay. So if we look at another form, I'm going to show you another form that we did during remote learning with the math teacher that I work with, who's just amazing. We had this form that we gave to students. We had several of these, but she set this up so beautifully that I wanted to show you what it looks like on the back side. So this is a quiz called 6th grade integers. And this is what we were giving to our 6th graders when they were not in school with us at all. And so we had to make sure that they were able to take this quiz, and we were able to at least give them some feedback based on what they knew. So I'm going to show you what the quiz looks like, and then I'm going to show you what the student responses look like. You can see in here we've done sections, and this is something that's really great that I'm not going to go into today, but organizing your form into sections is a great idea. You can put directions, videos. We actually copied these from Envision, which is our math. These are like literally, this is one of their worksheets that we would have given them on paper. And then we come down here and ask them these questions. So this question, what is the absolute value of -5? You can see that here in the answer key box, I've put the answer is 5, but I could also add another correct answer. So for this, sometimes for remote learning, you might want to type the actual word 5. Because what if a student answers the word 5 and gets it wrong? To me, that's really bad. Like, I don't want students to feel bad like they got it wrong. I want to know what they know. So I try to say, make sure you answer in numbers, but you could also add more than one correct answer. I've told the robot to mark all other answers incorrect, and then I gave a feedback for all answers, no matter whether you answered right or wrong. I put -5 is 5 digits away from 0. It's kind of like a little hint, and if you got it right, it's more like an affirmation. And then this is worth 1 point. If you look at the student side of it, I want to make sure I'm not getting ahead of myself here. I'm going to go back to my presentation. So we went into creating a key. Oh yeah, okay. So I'm going to go into the response side in just a second. But so right now we're still on the teacher side, where we're making things and we're trying to bring things into our questions. You can always add videos into your quiz. And if you're talking about remote learning, you're going to have to do this. Putting that stuff that's directly on YouTube is a good idea. I would try it out. Sometimes YouTube gets a little wonky when it comes to permissions. If you have any way that you can download the video and put it in your drive, your students will never have a problem opening it up. It's a couple extra steps, but there's nothing worse than assigning something remotely and then having students say, well, I couldn't open any of those videos. It's kind of a heartbreaker, right? So, that's something that if you can just download a video from YouTube and put it in your drive, you won't have any issues, and you can bring it in right from your drive as a file. All right, so I'm going to go back here now to my slides. And we've gone through how to make the key. Now, we can talk about the eyeball, the preview. This is the top of every form. This is your best friend ever. The preview eyeball is something that opens a brand new tab. It won't mess up what you're doing. It'll open a new tab right next to your form, but it'll be the live view. It'll be the view the kids see. And if you're smart, you'll go take your quiz and you'll see how it flows. And sometimes you'll find things that you're like, ooh, that's not good. And so you'll go change it, right? So just close the tab, go back to your edit version of your form, make sure it's ready to share. When you're in a form, you can also send the link to people. So if we go back to our practice form, I'm up here in the top right here where I'm in my integer form. This send button is kind of one of the most controversial things about Google Forms. That button has said send for 7 years, and people don't understand that people think it should say different things like have people take this or submit or whatever. All this means is I want this form to go out so people can take it. So what I generally use is the link. And so if I wanted my colleague across the hall to take my quiz, I would go to the send button and I would send the link. Now you could send this incredibly long link to them in an email, or you could be nice and shorten it up so it doesn't look so intimidating. And I could say, hey, will you take this quiz and let me know what it looks like? Any suggestions? That's how you send it to somebody, okay? Now, if I was working on this form with my teammate and I wanted her to help me add things or change things, don't do that, because that's the test taker link, right? If you wanted to add your teammate, you would come here to your 3 dots and come down to add collaborators, and you can add them so that now you both have the same edit access to that form. You could send it out to whoever you want. And if you're on a team that's trying to do lots of surveys and things like with the staff, you'll use this a lot because you'll want people to help you with the form. So that's not, add collaborators is not the same. Don't add your students as collaborators, right? Because they'll just be able to go in and edit your form and make all the questions right? So you don't want to do that. So here's another good thing that's here, make a copy. So if you've made a great quiz, just make a copy and change it. Don't try to recreate everything. And that's where you get to that as well. Okay, back to the good stuff. So the preview button, of course, one of your BFFs. Make sure you preview your form. Don't ever make a quiz before you preview it. At your own peril, I will say, but that's, middle school teachers, we're very cautious about what we do, but you never want to send something out. Even if you're in a hurry, just don't do it. Like, try it yourself. You never know what's in there. Lots of bad typos in this world that can really embarrass you. Okay, so looking at responses now. I'm going to show you the live version of this, but real quick. Any form that you make, you can accept responses or not. So you can turn them on or off, and that's going to be in the responses tab. We'll take a look at that in a second. So if you have a quiz that you want kids to take by Friday at 3, you can toggle that off so that it won't let anybody take the quiz after Friday at 3. I also have a lot of form quizzes that I make ahead of time, and then I won't turn them on until it's time for the kids to take them. And so I use that toggle a lot, and you can toggle it on and off as many times as you want to. Oops. Sorry, I got a new mouse and I have a scroller. It's just messing me up completely. And then when you look at your data, which we'll do in a second, you can look at your data either in a summary view, which is just everything that every response from your form in an aggregated view. You can also look at your form and how it performed by question. And then you can also look at it by individual. So you'll see each student's quiz all on its own, which is very helpful as well. So let's look at a live view of that. We'll go back to that 6th grade integers form because it is a form that kids actually took. Now I can see up here that 9 students took this quiz, which now that's how you know it was during remote learning, right? Because only 9 kids ended up doing it. And this is after we weren't grading anything. So now you know, right? And you know what's funny though? The kids that took this are the ones that really needed to. Like, I was very impressed. Like I think the kids that knew the integers weren't doing it, but the ones that did, I really was impressed with the kids that were in there still trying to learn. And I was actually very, very pleasantly surprised. Okay, so here we go. If we go into our summary, you can see I'm in that summary view. You're going to see everything you need to know about your quiz and how it performed in a very general sense. So I can see my average, my median, my range. And then here's all my kids coming down here. Okay, So this is now why you know why you need to make one of your questions, what is your name? Because this is what you will look at, and then you'll cry. Because then you will, there's no way, well, I mean, I guess you could go look up every S number, but who has time for that? Nobody. I also like this one, which is frequently missed questions. So you can look really quick. Okay, obviously I need to go over integers from greatest to least, right? So I can see that right away. This is super fun for, like a pretest. Yeah, we all have these great pretests we took where when I became a teacher, I would give them and then I would spend 6 hours grading them. Now I can have a robot do it for me and I can spend my time teaching that concept instead of grading 30 quizzes. All right, so if we go back down now, I can look and see each question, how everyone did. And these kids got a lot of these right, so they're not very fun graphs to look at. But the one thing I want to show you is here, you'll see a little copy icon. That's the Google copy icon. If I wanted to copy this graph and put it in a slide or put it in a doc, you can just click that. And so this is really great. So if you have like a staff survey, and then you want to bring the survey responses into a slide presentation that you're giving, and you don't want to open up the form, you can just copy these over into your slides, which is really nice. All right, so the general view, yeah, okay, it's good, but I love looking at stuff by question because I can go through each question after you get to the ones that are, what is your name, right? We don't really care about that. Next thing. All right. So I can look at this question, what is the value of absolute 5? Absolute value of -5. I can go through now and change which question I'm looking at. So if I want to see how did my students do on compare these two integers, I can go right to that question. Now I had Google grade this for me, but there's sometimes you don't want that to happen because you want to actually look at what kids are writing. So you can come in here and grade these so fast. So I could come in here and click a red or a green based on the answer that the students give. I don't see their names because it doesn't matter to me, right? If I'm grading these really fast, if you've ever used Edpuzzle, it's just like that. All you care about is what the short answers are, and you can go through your whole class really quick. And then at the end, you can go through and be like, wow, you got half of those wrong. But right now, I don't really care. I'm just grading. I can also change the number of points, right? So if somebody gives a great short answer or something that's really good, or maybe an extra credit something, I can actually add another point on there manually right there, or it'll be the point value that I already assigned. So I love looking at stuff by question because you're able to look at just the question itself and answer to the same question. And then here's the best thing. If you go to an individual response, so this is one of my students' quizzes. I can see her whole quiz. I can see everything that she answered. But let's say that on this question, let me find maybe, hopefully she got one wrong here somewhere, maybe not. They're all green. All right. If I wanted to give her some feedback, I can actually click individual feedback and I can give her feedback that only she can see. So if I'm teaching remotely, and maybe this doesn't have much application in math, but if we're talking about language arts, social studies, places where stuff is a lot more subjective, where there's a lot more opinions around, that is great because I can take the answer to a question and then say in my own voice, right, typing, I can just say, well, here's something to think about, or I can give more feedback and then only that student can see that. She's not in my classroom. I can't have a conference with her like I usually do. So I have to find some way to substitute that. I can also attach an audio file. Teachers are doing that more and more. And starting August 1st, if you're a Flipgrid user, you can just do audio clips and they can be hosted by Flipgrid. Of course, you can always do an audio clip on your computer, but I could leave a link to an audio clip and give her audio feedback instead of typing all the time. So be thinking about different ways that you can give kids feedback that's not only good for them, if they're not in school, or it's their day off, or however it is your district is doing it, just hearing your voice is so powerful. And don't discount that because you'll get a lot more out of kids if they see that kind of interaction and that human element coming from you to them. All right, so those are our responses and the 3 different ways that you can look at them. You can also print out a student's quiz which I do a lot for vocabulary quizzes. I'll have parents that want me to send home what their student did on the vocabulary quiz so they can review, or any kind of quiz. You can just print that one student's quiz. The trash can is good because sometimes you'll have a student, if it's something that they can only take once, where they had to leave to go to the nurse, somebody came and picked them up, they had to go to orchestra. I mean, if you've taught in elementary school, you know there's just not a day where people aren't interrupted doing something. I can delete the response and they can start over again. It's important to know with Google Forms or quizzes, once you start something, there's no like save progress like there is when you're, like you're doing your TurboTaxes, right? If you start a quiz, nothing happens on the Google side until you press submit. So that's why it's important as teachers for us to not make these long drawn out quizzes, because if a quiz is taking 40 minutes and your class is only 35 minutes long, none of your students are going to finish it, and there's no save along the way. So try to figure out a way to compartmentalize what you're doing, and then think about, student, kids being tired. Nobody wants to take a 45-minute quiz. So try to bring it down a little bit so that the kids aren't overwhelmed. All right. So if we go back to my slides, excuse me. So we went through that. I'm going to go through a couple of my pro tips. Okay, so these are things that I like to do and just share with you so that maybe it'll help you if you're going to keep using forms as quizzes. In that right side part of your form, you'll see that next to your send button, there's 3 dots. And we looked at make a copy. Oh, there's the undo button there too. I don't know, people have asked me where that thing is. And undo in a form, you can definitely undo. And all your changes are saved in your drive too. So if you mess up a form, don't worry, you can go back and undo it. If you look at your preferences, you're only going to get 2 options, right? Simplicity. You can make all questions required. So some people like to do that where they're making a quiz. Yeah, okay, yeah, I want all my kids to answer all the questions, duh. Well, click that and then all questions will automatically be required. If it's unclicked, no questions will be required, and you have to toggle every single one. So if you are like, every question of mine is required, you cannot turn this in until they're all answered. Make sure you toggle that or check it. And then if your questions are always worth 5 points, then change this to 5. Or if most of them are worth 5 points. Otherwise, when you make your answer key, you're going to have to go through every single one and go up to 5. Believe me, I've probably done it a million times. And then they created this and I was like, dang, like how much time did I spend doing that? But it's a great thing because sometimes teachers, like our quizzes are just worth the same amount of points. And you know me, I'm always looking for ways to save people time. So make your form work for you, right? We want the robots to do the work so we have time to be with our students. Here's another pro tip. Okay, so when you're making a quiz, my favorite one, I have a quiz that has 20 questions and every question's worth 5 points. I think every teacher has one of those, right? Because they add up to 100. All right, so I have one of those and I use it as a template. And in every single question, the correct answer is A, the first one. When I change the quiz, the first answer is always the right answer. And I can do that because in my settings, the cog, in presentation, I have this checked, right? So we're going to shuffle the question order. And then in each singular question, you have shuffle answer order. I should probably show you that, but just so you know, you can shuffle all of your questions and you can shuffle the answers within the questions. And I'll show you that part in a second. But the second pro tip is in that presentation, same place, you can put directions. And I do this all the time. So they click submit and they get a thing that says, you're done with your vocabulary quiz. Now get your binder and do this thing. Because if you're a teacher and you have 26 kids, they don't all finish a quiz at the same time. So if you can give them that one sentence of here's what to do next, you think they know what to do next, but we all know the truth, right? So if they read that on their Chromebook and they go, oh yeah, I got to go do this now, you'll find that there's just a lot less time wasted. Okay, so let's go back to a live quiz, maybe the learning form. Yeah. When I'm in my learning form, any kind of multiple choice questions, we were just talking about that. There's these 3 little dots down here in the corner. And I can go into here and select shuffle option order. So you see what I did? I went down to the 3 and I checked shuffle option order. In my quiz template, I have that checked on every question. So I always make the first answer the right answer. And then when my kids take the quiz, everybody has them in a different order and everybody has the questions in a different order. Now, be careful. If one of your questions is name, try to make it so it's in a different section so it doesn't get shuffled with all the other questions. Sometimes I don't question the question order. It just depends on, the quiz itself. Like if I'm doing comprehension, I don't want the comprehension questions to be the same order as what they just read. Like I like it to move around so they have to kind of think about what they actually read. So those times I'll actually ask the questions to be shuffled. But if you want to shuffle the option order in a multiple choice, that's where you go. These 3 bubbles down here. I won't have a chance to get into response validation, although it's one of my other favorite things. But that's also in the 3 dots when you go down to a paragraph or a short answer. And this is great because you can force the person taking the quiz or form to give you something. So like in this question, they would have to give me a number that's greater than, I don't know, 12. And then I could also put something like, hey, it has to be more than 12, and it won't accept the answer, right? I can have it be a number, it could be text, it could be length. Oh my gosh, mind-blowing. So if I change this to paragraph, I could say, I'm not going to take any question unless this is 500 words or characters or less, or 100 characters or less, or whatever it is. So if you get kids that'll just do like 1 word, it'll say, sorry, you gotta give me more than that. And you can even write that here. Sorry, you gotta give me more than that, or whatever. Or you can do it, give me a little bit more, or whatever. And then they'll actually give you a longer answer. So, if you teach bigger kids, they're always trying to take the path of least resistance a lot of the time. And so anytime you can kind of put yourself in there and be like, no, I know you know more than that, because that's what you would do if you were standing there, right? So why, we can make our form do that for us. All right, so let's see, that was my other pro tip with the shuffling. This graphic I like to show in my workshops lately because this is an acronym that I thought up at the end of March when the world was falling apart, and I just didn't know. I was having a really hard time just trying to wrap my brain around. I was doing okay, but not everybody else was doing okay, right? That's how I like to think of it. And I was in the shower and actually thought of this acronym. I'm not kidding. But it's all the things you have to think about when you are planning something for a student to do that you're not in that room. So if I'm assigning something where I don't get a chance to get up with my smartboard and explain or anything, I need to decide things in this acronym. I have to think about, how am I going to communicate my learning task and expectations? How are my students going to access the learning task in mind? This is number 1. There's a lot of teachers out there that are really excited about using lots of tools, but they're not thinking about how are kids going to actually get to it. Do they go to ClassLink? Do they know how to get to ClassLink? Do they know how to get to Seesaw? Do they know how to get to Google Classroom? And then once they get there, what's going to be their experience? Are they going to click out to something else? Are they going to read a PDF? Are they going to watch a video? Is that video going to work? So that's another thing you have to think about. Next up, how do they submit it? How are they going to turn something into me? If you're a Google Classroom user, a Seesaw user, it's pretty much cut and dry for you. You kind of know that kids are going to get on and submit. But even there's some idiosyncrasies with mark as done in Classroom versus turn in. So think about that first. Like, what is the experience going to be for them? And then how are you going to assess them? Are you going to assess them by a competency or essential learning? And then how are you going to give them your feedback? You cannot just have kids turn things into you and then have it go into this black hole. Because guess what? That's why kids don't want to work for you. It's because they're turning stuff into you that nothing ever happens to, right? So you have to make sure feedback is built in and that there's something that they get back from that, whether it's some kind of, notification, some kind of like, hey, you turned this in, thank you, or I like what you said. doesn't have to be a lot, but there needs to be something there because kids need to have some sort of audience to make it worthwhile. So that is my Caesar salad. And I've used it a lot this summer just talking to people, and it really is all just the basic 6 steps that you need to go through when you're planning any kind of remote learning where you can't be in the same room. Okay, let's do a chat check. There's no questions? I'm that good? Oh my gosh. If you don't know what HMU means, right, it's hit me up. You guys know that? Okay. I have a 16-year-old, so I know all the acronyms. But hit me up. If you do want to hit me up later with questions, you certainly can. Let me give you my my resources too. This is what was one thing you weren't going to teach? But hold on. The one thing you weren't going to teach, but you did, called response validation. Yeah, that's at the bottom of the screen. Sorry, my screens are all messed up now. The bottom of the screen, when you're in a form, you'll see it right here. So if we go to these 3 dots, inside of any question, you can make it response validation is the thing. Yep, it's good stuff. All right, let's see what else. Oh yeah, I mean, this is obviously recorded, right? So it's on our YouTube. So if you join our Google group, you'll see our YouTube channel, and all these things are recorded. I will never watch this, by the way. I hate watching myself. Let's see. Let's go back to my resources. So in the slides, and I'll go back again before we say goodbye, and we'll look at any more questions. So if you think of something, drop it in there. Here's some more resources for you to use. I only share things that I actually like. I don't just try to throw in a bunch of stuff, but there's a great playlist on YouTube that just is all Google Forms, so you can just pop some popcorn and sit back and watch. And then Google obviously has an amazing teacher training center. You don't have to have a trainer to train you, but if you like to do it on your own, we have a great teacher center. That's where you go if you wanted to ever get Google certified. And there's forms training there. And then EdTech Lori is another Google trainer that does these great video tutorials. Like, a lot of us do video tutorials, but there's not very many people that do really good ones that I like. And so her forms tutorials are very, very well done, and you'll like them. This next link is from Ditch That Textbook, and it's just practical ways to use forms in schools that you might not have thought of. Everything from school classroom inventory to surveys, bathroom checkout. There's all different ways that you can use it. And then, and then there's another YouTube channel called EDU in 90. That is Google for Education's YouTube channel. And so it's a very short episode. 90 seconds, right? And it's all about a certain aspect of Google. If you go to YouTube and you subscribe to EDU in 90, you'll get this cute little episode every week that teaches you something new. And that's the way I like to learn. I like to learn in little bits, right? I don't like to get overwhelmed. If you want to get a hold of me or follow me, I'm on Twitter, and I have Wakelet collections. I only have a couple live right now. They're all remote learning ones, but I'll wake up some of my old ones later, usually mostly Google stuff. And if you haven't used Wakelet at all, it's an amazing, it's like grown-up Pinterest, I guess I like to think of it as. It's like you can save videos and links and Flipgrids and on there, and it's kind of just like a grown-up version of Padlet or Pinterest. You get it. And then that's my email down there. aktechteacher.com is my website. Really not much on there except for how to get a hold of me, but and then I do lots of training here in Fairbanks. So if you are a Fairbanks teacher, I'm hopefully going to be offering lots of training at the end of the month. We're just waiting on the okay to have physical people in buildings, so downtown at FEA. So if you're interested in that, we'll have a whole bunch of training going on. And let me check my chat box one more time. So Laura said that she had kids that only wanted paper quizzes, and you're right, you can just print the quiz. And If you're only talking about a couple of quizzes, I mean, it's easy to make that that adjustment, and I think that's one of the wonderful things too. Is I had a couple kids that were going on like a vacation, and they were going to have internet, so I would just give them the quiz ahead of time on paper. And then she uses forms for parents for conferences. Yes, definitely. And then you can just print the form. So one way I use forms in that same way is at the beginning of the year, you know how everybody sends home that like, hi, what do I call your child, and how do they get home, and where do they usually have what do they usually have for lunch? Well, I have that form, but at the top I put a bit.ly or a tiny URL that is a link to a form of that same thing. And I usually have 75% of my class fill it out online, and I'll get a few parents that send the paper one back. But if you give people the opportunity to fill it out online, they usually will. So forms can be a really, it's a powerful thing. And then, the fact that we can use them as quizzes now, we didn't used to be able to do that. It's really taken on a life of its own. And I love that I can just look back on past students' data. And one thing I did not cover, which I could do a whole other hour on, is how to bring all of your data into into sheets. And so if we're looking at, and I'll just show you really quick before I stop talking. If you go into your responses tab, you'll see this green sheets icon. You can take all that data and dump it into a spreadsheet. So it'll look like this. I'm just going to make a new one right now. So right now, Google is creating a spreadsheet that's a response destination for all of my data. So now you can see the timestamp, what the kid's S number, right? Here's their names. And then here is what they said for each question. So this is really great for lots of reasons. We actually, as a team, when we were team teaching, we had a behavior log, right? So I made a form, a student would fill out the form, and then all of the answers would go into this one spreadsheet that we could all look at. And so we could sort behavior data by the student's first or last name, or homeroom teacher, or what time of day it happened. We got real crazy with the data on that. So sometimes you want to look at responses in that response tab, but a lot of times it's really helpful to have that data on a spreadsheet that you can play around with and sort and do conditional formatting and all that kind of thing. So that is one of the most fun things I think about forms too, is you can dump all that data into somewhere else. All right, well, if there's no last questions, I will turn it over to Chelsea.
Yeah, thanks so much, Allison. You had a lot of great tips for us. So I really enjoyed listening, and I hope everybody else did as well. Just a few announcements. We'll start with the second one with the green bullet. Allison just briefly mentioned using sheets with Google Forms. I believe that, Laura is going to be going more in depth on that next week. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure you sign up for our session next week. Then there is the hyperlink again to this slideshow presentation. So you can go ahead and get those hyperlinks. They're also on our website, GG Alaska, that you can find this information as well. If you haven't already, join our Google group. It's a really great place to connect, especially as the school year gets started and you guys have questions or have ideas that you can share with other educators across the state. Thank you again for joining us. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And thank you, Allison, for all your knowledge and information you gave us today. All of these are hyperlinked as well. We have our website, a link to our Google group, as well as the link to our Twitter if you want to follow and connect with us in the future. So again, thank you, and hope you guys have a great night. See ya.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.